little gloomy. A little gloomier out than the last couple of drives to the gyms have been. But that will not stop me. In no way will that reduce the amount of energy and hype that I'm going to be able to bring to this arm day. And by arms, I really just mean tris and bis. Forearms, they need some love, that's for sure. But I don't know, not every arm day. At least not for me now. I used to do forearms with every arm day for kind of a while, at least a couple of years there. But it got to the point where my forearms were kind of overpowering my upper arms. And I kind of looked a little like monkey-ish, if you get really beefy forearms, but your upper arms aren't really matching. That was kind of a while back. Part of that training might have also come from the rock wall. I used to work at a rock wall for a little while in the summertime, so I was getting into that. All sorts of bouldering and everything else. Which, I mean, any kind of physical activity you're doing, if you do push yourself, odds are you are going to get some gains from it. I mean, even if you know anybody who ever goes bouldering, us, when we think of being pumped, that's always a working out thing. But anybody into climbing too, they talk about the pump as well, except they don't want it, right? If you're trying to really pinch a little pinch or crimp or whatever else, and you got a forearm pump, makes you it actually takes away from your ability to really do that. But for us, we want the pump, right? The more pumped, the better. So plan for triceps. I want to hit him from every angle possible. I'm talking regular push down. I'm talking machine dips. I'm talking overhead extensions, and then potentially anything else in between. Maybe some skull crushers, or I think it's is it a French press when you do a skull crusher on an incline bench? That always feels a little better for me. But I want to smack them around top to bottom, side to side, inside and out. Biceps, sometimes I don't mind being a little bit more simple with. I'm talking just, at the simplest, camping out in front of the dumbbell rack and just doing straight, heavy dumbbell curls from unpumped until complete and nothing else. I've had a couple of lifts where that was basically it. But I think triceps do need a bit of a different approach. They're a bit more complicated, I would say, because the amount of stretch and squeeze that you can kind of focus on with different movements really does add up to the point where now I know, like, if I'm going to do tris, I don't want to just camp out and only do push downs. Sometimes I will, but I don't want to only do that for every lift, because I know I'm going to be missing out on some of the stretch focused stuff from an overhead extension with a rope or like a V-bar. But I also like kind of the deep squeeze of a machine dip. I want my arms pushing up here, basically every kind of angle. Whereas biceps, I don't necessarily think they need as much variability, right? Frankly, if you're doing some crazy dumbbell curls and you're actually going crazy with them, then odds are you're probably going to have a solid fucking bicep pump. And, that's not to say you should only ever do straight up dumbbell curls, because as simple as you might think your bicep is, right, here to here, which isn't a terrible way to look at it, that is kind of its primary movement path, you can specifically target, especially in the squeezing portion, different parts of it. I mean, you're never going to be able to lengthen it. Like, your bicep is inserted with a certain length of tendon, which isn't really going to change. The only thing you've got the ability to do is potentially thicken up the muscle side of things. But different movements with curls too, it's going to be in your best interest. So I might even do some bicep bias pull downs, maybe some drag curls, or some incline bench sort of like, I don't even know what you'd call it, or you've kind of got your arms like hanging behind your body. There's a lot of ways to go about it. So I could probably, if you really had me try to list them all off, I could probably think of fucking 50 different dumbbell curl variations and styles of sets. So if that's the case, if there's that many different ways to go about it, then, at least try to throw some new shit in every lift, or every couple of lifts. Anybody who's a real serious progressive overload, more power lifter kind of guy, they're going to tell you do not ever do the same lift twice in a row. Your body's gonna get used to it, which there's a bit of bro science there, but historically bro science is usually at least, well, maybe 70% of the time ended up to be true. So there are some merit in the logic. But all that's to say is I want to walk in with an open mind, try doing exercise order and selection that I didn't do last arm day. And as long as I can finish off arms fully pumped and well fatigued, I get to go home a winner from this lift. So let's just try to make all that happen. I've been starting with squeezing sets of the rope pretty consistently. Let's change it up, start with a heavy set of dips. And since this is the first set, I'm extra fresh. So even though it is pretty heavy, I'm still gonna be able to manage this weight and really squeeze as hard as possible at the bottom. Now all I gotta do is pick a good song. Yeah. Okay. One more of these. Okay. Oh. That felt pretty good. Let's actually do one more heavy one like that, and then move on. Yeah. 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 Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, let's move on. All right, this will be good. Usually I do a little bit of a pre-exhauster before these overhead extensions, but my triceps are still burned out from those 3 heavy dips. I don't think I need one. So boot up against the upright, and then I'm really trying to feel my triceps basically stretch to the point where my arm is just no longer bending. Sit in that depth for 1 second or a moment, extend, and repeat. So not the craziest thing in the world, but I do like this set. There we go. Oh my God, okay. Okay. Hard to beat a classic, slightly cambered push bar. Push down, I mean. And then I had to switch to this cable, much smoother than that one. Something to take into consideration, because if your cable stack is real grindy, it kind of throws off the whole movement in general. Because when it's smooth, constant tension the whole way around. But when it's sticky, it gets harder on the way down, which might be kind of a good thing. But since it's still sticky on the way up, it's actually lighter on the way up. So it's like a weird, if you're running a gym, just keep the shit oiled up for real. But this one's good. This will be just a classic brutish set. Oh my God, okay. I think one more of those and that might be it. Oh yeah. Oh my God, okay. Ugh. Fucking hair in my mouth. Good set though? Let's start curling something. Let's get real with some 65-pound curls, plus the sleeves rolled up a touch for some dramatic effect. Oh my God, okay.
All right. I lied. Just that one more. Whew. The Rocky IV soundtrack has been getting me going for this arm day. And it definitely will for this set of preachers. This is heavy, but it's not too heavy. This is more like the upper echelon of the amount of weight I don't want to use for this movement, I think. So I can totally expect 8 good reps, then maybe a few partials, but not much partial ability with a preacher. It's kind of just you get to a point where that last rep isn't going to happen. And with movements like that, it's so nice because failure is not a guessing game, right? If you hit failure on a squat, you can say pretty certainly, like, okay, there's no way I could have even got one more. Whereas on something like a curl or a push down where you can do partials, or you can use a little bit of body language and force another rep, a little more ambiguous. So that's the benefit of some movements like this where they're kind of heaviest at the bottom, because it just makes failure like that, right? Like a bench or a squat. You know, I'm not going to go to the bottom of the squat, not get it, and then say, okay, let me get one more, and then just stand up. Unless I have like a miss groove or something. That'd be the only exception. But let's make this shit happen, then go from here. If it feels good, I'll do a few. If I don't love it, I'll move on. Yeah. 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 Oh, yeah. One more. But let's lose a 5 on either side. A little too heavy. Yeah. Oh my god. Okay. That's enough of that. Let's pick something else. I probably could have got that last rep. God damn it. Well, let's redeem myself on the next set. Even though I am using both cable arms, I'm not using both stacks. I just kind of like this situation because this cable is actually high enough that when I'm sitting down in this little seat, I can get a full stretch on my biceps. Because look, I'm sitting all the way down. My arms are all the way straight. Can't touch the fucking handle. So reasonably heavy, like 60, I don't know what that would equate to. Heavy enough. But there's a little bit of a trick to this because I'm not just pulling with my lats and my traps and everything else. I'm trying to keep my back completely out of it and just like kind of magnify on my arm here. Right? I'm trying to bring my hand toward my shoulder like this. So it's kind of like doing a drag curl. So that's when you're holding a dumbbell or a cable and you just pull your hands up straight like this. I'm basically just doing a drag curl but upside down. And it really does give me a different kind of squeeze and sort of feeling, especially outer bicep. Right? I'm talking like brachialis, this fancy piece in between my bicep and tricep. I feel a lot of this at the bottom when I really squeeze. So this will be a good weight. I might actually go up. And no, that's good. That's actually good. I don't need my ego to get in the way of making this a good one. And just squeeze the heck out of it. And the straps just help me keep my forearms out of it too. I'll go thumbs. Okay, that's good. I actually gotta go a little lighter for this next one. But biceps thrashed. One more, and honestly, if it's a good one, might be it. Okay. All right. I think that's it. Let's go find some lighting. There we go. Arms complete. That only took, how many sets was that? Push down, or no, dip, dip, dip. Overhead, overhead. 2 push downs, 7 for triceps. Dumbbell curl. Preacher, preacher. Bicep, bias, pull down, bicep. Yeah, 6 and 7. About right. With a little less volume for buys. I mean, depends on the guy, right? I think for me, my biceps feel kind of more, they feel like they cook a little quicker than tries. But that's not necessarily a rule across the board. I feel like maybe just since your biceps or your triceps are a little bigger, maybe they can handle more of a beating. But either way, both arms fully pumped. I can, well, nothing like Mr. Lavroni, but I can get a little bit of a wobble in here. Oh my goodness. No. Yeah. Whew. It's fucking hard to hold an arm pose when when they're fully pumped. But let's not skip the front lat spread. So yeah, that is what I'm talking about. As I get leaner, this separation between my shoulder and my tricep, this little angle right here, this bit of skin and a touch of fat underneath, is getting thinner and thinner to the point where the distance in well, not the distance, but just the pure separation of tricep and shoulder will start to get more and more defined and separated, which just looks extra fucking cool. Ooh. Now I might just be hypersensitive, but I think that's a hint of some tricep feathering. What about the other side? Maybe a little less. I think I've got slightly stronger left tricep genetics than right, but nothing jarring. So as I get leaner, more and more of these veins are going to poke out. As I was doing those dumbbell curls, the first one with the sleeve rolled up, I don't think I've ever seen this kind of, well, let me do a little breath hold to really squeeze it out. Oh, I don't think I've ever seen these two veins be more defined. And there's a couple over here too, but they're not, maybe not so pronounced. Let me see if I can get them going. Ugh. A little more on the forearm side of things. But arms done. Let's go eat something. Time to go. Time to go eat some sushi. Whoops. Accidentally pulled that in front of the guy. But got a little family dinner planned tonight, not just a regular, home meal with a YouTube video or a movie plan. That's one thing that's nice about living close to the rest of the family. Just get to stop by, eat some of their snacks, and roll. Well, maybe a little more than that, but you get what I'm saying. So that was a good arm day, and I think I don't know, might have it's not a bad way to describe it, but I think I might have kind of blown my load a little bit too early with that machine dip for the beginning of the lift, with triceps at least, because those 3 sets were taxing. I'm talking pretty heavy weight. Like, I don't think, even if that stack was twice as heavy, I probably wouldn't have used any more weight than the stack, just because that was probably about right. I kind of lucked out that was like just about as much weight as I probably would have used anyway, but that felt pretty good. But after those 3 sets, I almost I kind of feel like I might have cooked my triceps a little bit too much. So it's like, at least in a dieted context, it might have done me a little better to ease into it with 1 or 2 lighter squeezing sets before getting into a real hefty one like that. And that's and the only reason I say that is because it probably would have added to a more kind of crazy level of pumpedness, right? Instead of just maybe getting a little bit more fatigued and kind of burned out. Because we all know the feeling, like today was good. Like, of course I was getting pumped up, but there is a certain sensation of, like, doing your sets and they are adding fatigue, but you're not really getting like extra pumped from doing more volume, So it's kind of a situation where it's like just trying to, like I was saying in the car on the way here, trying to orient your lifts such that you kind of build yourself up to a good amount of fatigue and pumpedness at the end of it. And it's just not well, I guess all I'm really trying to say is, like, give yourself a good lift that feels good to do, That's part of the reason why I don't love back and bis, is because if I do back first, then my biceps have gotten residually worked a little bit. Like, not a lot. Like, I would not expect to make crazy bicep gains purely by doing, back days, right? I think it's going to need direct work. But the amount of fatigue they get from back is like just enough where if I tried to do a back day or try to do a bicep lift after back, like, I just feel kind of pre-fatigued, but not in a good way, to the point where biceps end up feeling like I'm just like doing work, but it's not really building up to that kind of level of pumpedness, which I'm sort of aiming for. I'm getting a little bit distracted. This is probably the longest I've had to wait for a left turn out of this gym in a while. But when I do back and bis, if I do back first, just bis don't click. And if I do biceps first, then, I don't know, it just feels kind of weird, right? So maybe that's just my bro lifter talking, and I just like doing an arm day because I get to see my arms fully pumped up, which is definitely true. That totally plays a role. But, it just feels better for me, right? So if for whatever reason you've tried push-pull legs for a while, and maybe you feel like your push day is a little bit too long, you feel like, okay, I gotta do triceps, I gotta do chest, I gotta do shoulders, if you feel like that's a little bit much, maybe split it up a little bit. When it comes to hitting everything 2 times a week, right? Adding a day to that split, like let's say you wanted to split maybe split chest and back into their own lifts, give yourself an arm day. Then now you're doing instead of push pull legs 3 days, now you're doing legs, chest, back, arms. So it doesn't have that same roll off the tongueness that push pull legs does. But that's kind of how I like it. And I've tried the Arnold split for a while. I used to do chest and back together, and I like the idea. It's like alternating muscle groups. I'm hitting antagonistic whatever. But it's like if I finish chest first, which usually I would, then by the time I get to back, I'm like, dude, it's been 45 minutes or an hour of a hard lift on the front. I'm done. It just kind of feels like it's too much. So that's not to say you can't do chest and back together. I think if you're going to, it might make a little more sense to do it in a superset kind of fashion, like a set of chest and then immediately run over, do a set of back. I've liked that a little bit more. But again, that's just my opinion on it, right? So for whatever reason, I had to do a chest and back day in 2 days after legs. Like maybe I was going to do, maybe we were going to go on a trip somewhere, have like a really long drive or whatever, where I couldn't lift that next day and I had to do chest and back. Then for me, I would say, okay, I'm going to have the best lift if I do a set of bench and then immediately run over, do a set of pullovers. If I do a set of bench again, another pullover. Smith, row. Smith, row. Like little things like that. And that's not based off of just anything arbitrary. That's me looking at my training experience and saying, okay, I liked this, I didn't like this. So now that I'm in this position, what does that tell me? Right? It's like you're a freaking lifting AI. If you lift long enough and you kind of apply yourself a little bit, you're not just doing it mindlessly, and you try new shit enough, then you're basically going to build a bank of information in your mind about how movements feel, about how you react to certain foods, about how much cardio you can handle, about how much sleep you need, how much water you need. Like if I look back, I'm like, okay, the days where I drink only half a liter of water all day, I feel like shit and I have a headache. Okay, let me run what is arguably the most complicated computer system in the world, the human brain, and think, maybe I should drink more than a Monster in the morning and a Gatorade Zero for lunch. Maybe I should drink a couple of liters a day. Like little things like that. But not to make it sound so silly like that, but it really is just looking back and then adjusting for where you are now, right? So that's just playing into what I was saying before about how you gotta be open to new shit, try new shit. Don't just do the same lift again and again and again, because you're not really going to learn anything new. And that's half of the I think as a beginner lifter, and by beginner lifter I mean like year 1 and under, year 1.5 ish. When I look back at my training back then, I was doing way too much volume, but I did get the benefit of getting a lot of training experience, because if I was going to do a 25 set arm day, then I did get the practice of doing 25 sets of curls and 25 sets of pushdowns. Now, I don't think I was taking those sets as hard as I could have been back then. I think my mind was more so on like volume versus intensity. Like now I get the gist where it's like, okay, if I do 8 or so hard sets and I'm fully pumped at the end of it, that's probably all I need. But as a beginner, half of what you should be aiming for is that training experience. So the more you work out and the more that you get hands-on feeling of how this set feels, and maybe watching some form videos or listening to guys' critiques or looking at dudes who you think are a little ahead of you in the game, or not in the game, in the gym, and then seeing, okay, how is he doing this? All right, let me try doing that. Kind of a monkey see, monkey do kind of situation. And before you know it, you're no longer really having to focus on making your top priority just generalized training experience. You'll reach a point where, okay, you basically know what you're doing. And you can kind of run on a little bit of an autopilot where you get to say, okay, I got a chest day today. I want to change it up. Let's make it happen. You walk into the gym, you warm up. Let's do Smith machine. Let's do hammer strength press. Let's do some cable flies. And then let's do some some kind of burnout, superset of something else, whatever. And as long as you bring it, then you're good. You know, and that's when you really get to be experimental, because you can say, okay, I've been doing a lot of pressing based chest work for a while. Maybe let's make today a bit more, you know, fly based stretch, squeezing focused stuff. And then it just kind of adds to your ability to change it up, right? I mean, somebody who's just barely starting to learn how to roll, right? Like if you got a jiu-jitsu, you wouldn't call it a jiu-jitsu class, would you? Whatever the correct term would be. But, you know, a beginner dude, he's going to follow the basics. He's going to say, okay, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this double leg. I'm going to try this, whatever. Like, but the more experienced dude, he's done it for so long, he has this big ass like repertoire of different movements and feelings and like dives and ducks and whatever else, where, you know, he's just much more fluid, right? He can say, okay, let me try to do this, and before you know it, the guy's flipped upside down with an arm bar between both his legs. You know, that kind of shit, right? So all that's to say, you know, focus on getting a lot of experience with the basics first, and then you get the privilege of kind of, you know, being able to try new shit for yourself, and then see what ends up working, right? So it's like, look at your Tony Hawks, look at your not the biggest fan of the cambered wheels on all the JDM cars. I like wide body, but when you put your wheels at an angle, I don't know if I'm the biggest fan. But now I'm getting distracted. But, you know, let me get back to what I was saying. You know, look at all your Shaun Whites, look at all the, you know, these crazy top level dudes in things that are very kind of, well, it might not translate directly. Obviously, that's more of a skill, kind of art-based sort of thing. But how many times do you think he practiced the basics, right? Before he learned how to really play around and explore his own kind of style with stuff, right? How many hours did a Jimi Hendrix kind of character sit doing his pentatonic scales for freaking, you know, days on end before he got to the point where he can just, you know, rip shit off like nothing, right? So it's it really is, the more comfortable you get, the more experienced you get, the more you can kind of play around. So that's all I'm trying to say there. But plan for tonight: slam a bunch of tuna, not sashimi. What's it called when there's no rice? Well, slam a bunch of tuna. Go back to the apartment, get a bunch of probably canned chicken, maybe some turkey, a touch of rice. Go to bed and try to get some good night's rest for tomorrow's leg day, which is going to be quad focused. I'm not talking just hamstrings, so I better get ready for it. But until then, just think about doing your cardio. Just think about it. I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying anything crazy here. Just saying to put cardio on your mind. All right, so now that's in your hands. But I'll see you tomorrow for some legs.